Let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring, and when this happens, when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Here today to celebrate the life, work, and heroic leadership of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We are celebrating heroes whose work mirrored the same efforts made by Martin Luther King and made our communities a better place. The park we're standing on is 4.4 acres and is located on Martin Luther King Jr. Way between East Jefferson and East Alder Streets. The property originally was chosen by the City Planning Commission as the East Junior High School site. It was developed as a running track and athletic field for Garfield High School. By 1962, Garfield had obtained a track closer to the school and the property was sold to the park department in 1966. Playground improvements were made through the Central Area Motivation Project in 1967, based upon a design by landscape and architect William Lally. In 1969, the children at Leshai Elementary School named the park for the organizer and first president of Leshai Improvement Council. Park visitors and motorists driving along the busy street will first notice the unusual castle structure that houses the restrooms near the colorful climbers and sandbox on the southwest corner. Nearby are a wading pool and basketball court. Picnic tables and benches are well placed on the contoured grassy grounds, shaded by pine, oak, and maple trees. A long circling path awaits walkers in search for quiet relaxation. And now, I am honored to introduce Mr. Powell Barnett. Thank you.
I want to thank Ms. James for giving me that beautiful introduction. Wow. So how's everyone doing out there? Glad to see you here. And I never thought a park would be named after me. I'd also like to thank Miss Jackie Moscow and the relatives, my sons, and my grandsons, and my daughters for preparing this beautiful biography of the history of me. And I certainly never would have thought such a thing happened to me when I was growing up. And this park was developed and named after me in 1969, 2 years before I died. Of course, I lived to be the ripe old age of 88. I was born in Brazil, Indiana. I always thought that, what kind of name is that? You see, my father was an ex-slave. Yes, sir. He was a slave. Think about that a minute. A lot of white folk didn't want to pay blacks for work then when they were used to getting it for free, and there was a lot of unemployment. My father was one of the lucky ones. He was a miner. It was a hard job, but a job. Blacks didn't get paid the same as the white miners, so when a black man named James E. Shepperson came to recruit blacks to work in the coal mines in Washington State, my father moved all of us far, far away to a place named Roslyn, Washington. That was in 1889. I was 6 years old at the time. As a child, you really don't know why things are the way they are, but you still feel things. Looking back, I now know why it wasn't easy, and I also know how unique my growing up was. Northern Pacific Coal Company, a subsidiary of the Northern Pacific Railroad, started the coal miners in Roslyn in 1886. By 1888, the town's population grew to over 1,000 as miners from the eastern United States and Europe were attracted by the work the coal company offered. But wages and working conditions were bad, and the white miners went on strike in 1888. The company officials recruited strike breakers from around the country, including African Americans. About 300 black miners came to Roslyn, Washington between 1888 and 1889. Many brought their families, creating the single largest increase in the black population in the history of the territory. So the first black miners came to Roslyn under these circumstances, and most of the African Americans did not know at the time they were recruited to break an ongoing strike. Well, you can imagine how well that went down. These colored men were shot and treated roughly when they disembarked the train in Roslyn. There was much fighting between the white miners and the black recruits. Many of these brave black people came from Illinois, Iowa, Virginia, West Virginia, North and South Carolina, Missouri, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Arkansas. After much bloodshed and great deal of unrest, Governor Eugene Semple stepped in and tried to stop the battle. But it wasn't until White Miners Company accepted the company's offers of terms and returned to work alongside the black miners. However, both were armed. During the 1890s, the demand for coal generated a lot of work, and that reduced the sense of competition for jobs between the miners. Plus, as I said, coal mining was hard, and it was dangerous. That helped forge a bond between miners no matter what color you were. So on one hand, the history was not pretty, but eventually the tensions eased, and I grew up in a community where black and white residents of Roslyn came to an understanding. When the entire community needed a schoolhouse, our community offered up their church. Finally, when the white miners united, organized the workers, black and white miners entered the union as equals. However, we all knew that whites considered our place was second in line. But I still grew up seeing white people work side by side and living in a strong community of black folks and leaders. We had about everything we needed, from black church to black baseball. As a teenager, I worked in the Roslyn coal mine and played in the colored band. I came to Seattle in 1906 because I thought the big city offered greater opportunities, and in many ways it did. I was 23, and I found many different kinds of jobs. Sub-foreman, putting in new streetcar lines for, construction worker, building the Waldorf Hotel at 7th and Pike, and the Perry Hotel in Madison. Clerk for State Senator Frank Connor, and retired at 71 as a maintenance man at the King County Courthouse. Race relations, however, were pretty much the same as Roslyn, and in many cases worse, and I finally figured out I was going to have to get involved if I wanted change. So I directed much of my energies toward improving race relations and civic unity. I saw a lot of this growing up in Roslyn, and I tried to be a good leader in my community. You see, I am a firm believer in racial integration for all people. I believe always there is common ground in many things when you look for it. I worked hard to unite blacks and whites in the YMCA and the USO, as well as assisted Japanese Americans who had been displaced during World War II. I was a star baseball player in Roslyn when I was too old to play in 1944. I organized a semi-pro baseball umpires association in Seattle and secured affiliation with the National Association of Umpires. I organized the Leschi Improvement Council and became its first president in 1967. I worked hard organizing the East Madison YMCA and served as chairman of the board. The Seattle Urban League was dealt a terrible blow when Edwin G. Pratt was murdered in 1969. So I chaired a committee that revised the Seattle Urban League bylaws so Seattle's membership in the national organization remained intact. I was a sousaphone player. If you know what a sousaphone player is, could you raise your hand? Can you tell me?
It's the big round tuba that wraps around you.
That's correct. And the sousaphone is a type of tuba that fits around your body and is supported by the left shoulder. The instrument is named after American bandmaster and composer John Philip Sousa, who popularized it and its use in his band. I was the first black to become a member of the once all-white musicians union local. Nobody should work for the common good for awards, but if you are so honored, be humble and be gracious. I received numerous awards for outstanding civic contributions from many associations in the city, including the King County Council for the Aging, Jackson Street Community Council, Seattle Urban League, the mayor, and city council. And I am humble. And I am grateful. Again, thank you for coming to pay honor to me on this great day, also honoring Martin Luther King Jr.
Harmony Homes, which built homes for African Americans in previously all-white neighborhoods. He acted as a temporary loan agency, providing financing from his own funds at the going interest rate until black buyers found a mortgage company that would list the home. He was also active in the Fair Housing Listing, an organization that pooled the resources of 5 real estate firms to provide more listings outside the Central District for African Americans and match sellers for buyers. Gerber died in 1965 in a plane crash that also took the life of city council member William Bush, the first African American in office in the U.S. At the time of Gerber's death, over $200,000 was outstanding in loans that he had made to black purchasers. That would be almost $1.5 billion in today's dollars. All the loans were eventually repaid to the state. The art urban totems were made by local youth at Coyote Central and installed in 2000.